Aldo Matze here. Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My guest in this episode is percussionist, drummer, and inventor, of course, Mr. Roy Wooten, who's got a 5-time Grammy winner, inventor of the Zen drum and many other instruments, played very interestingly. Please help me welcome Roy Wooten. Welcome to my podcast, Roy. Thank you so much for being on the program. I wanted to ask you before we get into the whole discussion or conversation about shaping your journey. Just tell us from the beginning what that spark was for you. All of us have one thing that we always remember for our lives. What that spark was that started it all. What was it for you and when?
I think that, growing up as kids, there was me, my oldest brother, Reggie, and the brother right under me, Rudy. We're all within a year apart. For 10 days, me and Reggie are the same age. So I think we're Irish twins. And then Rudy is just like 1 month.
Wow.
Younger, 1 month of a year younger than me.
Okay.
And for some reason, there was this intense love for music. It's just the love for music was just intense. And some kind of way we sort of gravitated to the instruments that we like. Rudy, for whatever reason, whatever you blow, a tonette, a flute, a soda straw, bite down on the reed, he could just make music out of anything when. Whatever Red's touched with strings, he could just make it go. Because when we lived in Hawaii and started forming our band as kids, we learned ukulele in school. And so I would take my ukulele lessons home and show Reggie, and Reggie would just do it and 10 times more. Right. And when I first started, I like beating on boxes. I kind of gravitated to drums, and it wasn't about having drums. It's about beating on boxes and making rhythms and stuff. And so there's something about this intense love for music. And the only way I feel like I can truly answer your question is from a story I heard from the bass player who plays with Weird Al, his son Miles, Stephen J, bass player for Weird Al. He said when he went to Mali, he went to go live to Mali and he wasn't planning to come back, but he had got malaria and was forced to come back. But out there, he met the Dogon priests, and they talked about music, like music was like the Force in Star Wars. It was like a conscious entity that understood, that knows who we are the same way we know who our instruments are. So like if we name a guitar, Lucille, B.B. King called his guitar Lucille.
Yeah.
He said Lucille and these objects that we think are inanimate are actually alive. It's like we feel the wind, but we don't really know why the wind came up at that particular time. They feel the music coming through them. But the instrument doesn't know you the way you know the instrument. And they said our relationship to music is like that. Music knows us the way we know our instruments, but we don't know the same way back. So to fully answer your question is like, for some reason, man, we were called to this journey of music. And we meet people like you. We meet people along the way. My friends Carter Beauford, Dennis Chambers, Cindy Blackman, met her as a little kid. We see people that have been called to this journey. And if you think about it, man, you don't know why you do so much for music. It's like we've been called to something. So that's my truest answer is just like, man, it was some kind of calling and I'm still on that journey, man. It's a love affair with whatever this force of music is a great love affair with it.
It's an interesting perspective. And I mean, I totally agree with it. There's certain things that are inexplainable. Why we do certain things. It's just that pull. It's that gut, that other brain that says this is what you have to do, and you can't get out of it, and you're always pushing that envelope. I mean, I was that way. Yeah.
Look at how people push themselves to be good at it. People push themselves, and music is so special because, unlike sports, you don't have to stop. You don't have to stop. So, like, I got this whole philosophy now, like that it's a big job of the artist to really think about their bodies and their health, because as long as you're healthy, you can keep going. which is different than like when Charlie Parker, was trying to get people not to copy him. He's a drug addictions. He said, man, look, man, it's not drugs that make me be able to play like this. Don't do what I do, don't do what I do. But it's like, there's a temptation to want to just to push in maybe negative ways that's going to affect the longevity of this art form. And I think the longevity of music in this art form is something not to take for granted.
Yeah.
I talked with Carter Beauford about this, because Carter Beauford spent a summer woodshedding with me and Billy Drummond. I'm not sure if you talked to Billy Drummond yet, but I grew up around the corner from Billy Drummond.
Okay.
See, and we were like, it was about a 7-minute walk to his house. And he was a guy just like, I'm jumping around, but just like when Marcus Miller talked about the guy that taught him about music was a drummer in his art school. There was Omar Hakim on one side, and then there was was it Lewis Nash? If it's not Lewis Nash, it's somebody like Lewis Nash who's jazz. And he said this guy showed him everything about music. He said the best musicians are jazz musicians. You got to learn this music. You got to get into this. You got to understand what the notes are doing. Billy Drummond was like that.
Okay.
His dad had all the jazz records, and we spent time over there, and this is just a big part of fueling the growth. Or 1 year, Carter spent a summer with us, right? Carter Beauford.
Right.
Just we're in the summer, so we don't have high school and stuff, and we're off. And so we're just digging into it. We're pushing ourselves. Music is pushing us.
Sure.
And we're leaning into it. And we got so deep into it. When he went to school, he was going to college the next year. He didn't take his football scholarship. And he said he had a full ride. So if you talk to Carter, you got to ask him about this story. He said, I had a full football scholarship, but didn't take it to stay with the drums. Now, there's a why in the road. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like music is whispering. Here's your destiny. The football field, if you take that, it only lasts a short time.
Right.
But the arts, they're playing the New Orleans Jazz Festival, getting ready to play it right now. Do you see what I'm saying?
Of course.
This is a powerful thing that we're involved with here.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at Ringo. Ringo's in his 80s, right? Paul McCartney. Mick Jagger. We can go on and on. Yeah. And they're still, it's not, they don't need the money. But you got to do it. You're that musician that it calls you can't just not do it, especially if you're healthy, right?
Yes, especially if you're healthy. So it's a beautiful thing that we're a part of.
No, and it's incredible. Yeah. I don't know about you, but when you're getting to that place where or making those decisions, okay, is this really something I want to do? I remember my personal crossroads was, I grew up playing drums in local bands, and some of them were successful. We were having a great time, and then comes the moment of truth. Now you're going high school, that's great. Now you're going to university, and also thinking everybody's asking the questions. Okay, what are you going to do for life and that direction? So now you got to think about what you do in a different way. It's what you were doing is fun and great, and you're also going to school, but now there has to be a different purpose, right?
Yes.
What made that? I know what happened to me. I was just scared. I was doing many things, and I said, I really want to do this, but I don't know. But I just jumped in, like in the Pacific Ocean, and
there you go. And I tell artists a lot of things about on this journey. We're going to meet these whys in the road, and like with the example I just gave with Carter, he turned down a full scholarship of football. His coach is looking for him, and he's in the practice room, and it's like that's a serious why in the road, right? And then his next major why in the road came when now he has a gig with Ramsey Lewis playing on BET Jazz. But along the way, he's doing this project for this South African kid who auditioned for him and Leroy to help him do his music. That's Dave Matthews. And I remember Carter telling him about it. He said, man, we met this South African kid who's auditioning for us to help him. You know what I mean? Like, who does that?
Right.
And he said, man, it's actually pretty good. So they're working on this thing, but Carter has a gig now. So they complete this project, and it's like, it's pretty good. Are we getting ready to now go get behind it and get on the tour on a 13-passenger van with the band and go for it? And it's like Carter said, I didn't know what to do. Am I gonna leave? So he played it for Ramsey Lewis. And Ramsey Lewis heard it. He said, you have to do this. The music is good.
Nice.
You have to do it. And if it doesn't work out, you can always come back because we'll be playing the same old tunes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a big lesson in this, man, because this matches Will Calhoun. I don't know if you talked to Will, right? But Will was doing Harry Belafonte.
Right.
And while he was doing Harry Belafonte, he was Moonlight doing Living Color. And on Harry Belafonte's gig, you're not supposed to fly on days off. But on days off, he's flying to New York to work on Living Color.
Right.
On one of his trips back, Harry Belafonte's on the plane. So now he's come to Jesus. He has to just say, okay, look, I know we're not supposed to fly, but this is what I'm working on. And Harry Belafonte says, let me hear it. And he listened to it. And just like Ramsey Lewis did with Cardi, he said, this music is good. And Will says, I didn't get fired. See what I'm saying? So think about your art. That, like you said, you just went into the ocean, and for a minute, it's kind of dangerous, but you're just so into it.
Sure.
The hero's journey, you're just in it and you got to take it. You can refuse the call or you can take the call. And sometimes absolutely. You don't even know it's a call. It's just a little decision. Am I going to play football? Or am I going to play music? That's a huge decision. See what I'm saying?
Of course. And I mean, that the thing about, you can always go back. I mean, the things that I not ran away from, that I put aside, I said, if this doesn't work out, I can always come back because these things I can do with my eyes closed. But this, I have no idea. This is fear, right? This is fear. And sometimes you do things just out of fear.
That may not. And when you catch it, it's like Joseph Campbell talks about, when you catch this journey, all bets are off. Because when you catch it, you can find your way. What's hard for everybody else is fun for you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're practicing for 12, 13 hours and it just seems like a few minutes went by. You're just having fun, man. And so that's what a lot of times I'll talk to when I'm talking to young people or teaching. I'll say, don't let the fundamentals seem like they're boring, because the fundamentals of the rule book, you don't get any freedom without discipline. So that's fundamentals are showing you where the roadblocks, where the rules are. But the fundamentals, the first word, the secret is fun. If you can make practicing fun, dude, it's all bets are off. Sorry. All bets are off, because it's like riding a skateboard. If you don't make it fun, you're just going to be on the skateboard. But when they start having fun, they're not even riding on the ground anymore. They're sliding down. Man, it look like they're going to break their neck.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Fun is like, you're just like, whoa. All anybody can do when you're having fun is just move out your way. You know?
And it's also, I mean, you're right. Also about you're sacrificing. I mean, the word sacrificing comes to mind, but I remember in that transition year where I was living in fear, and not living in fear, but if this doesn't work, I'm saying I'm going to give it all. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if I don't do this, the worst part will be there waiting for me, because that regret that I didn't try. Right?
You didn't try.
That's the fear. But in the meantime, as you say, those 12, 13 hours, yes, they're fun, but it's a lonely world putting in that time. But you know what the outcome could be. I mean, at least you're playing music. But there's a lot of lonely hours and days. And
right? Yeah, it's fun. Funny, because some kind of way you have to have fun in the solitude too, because the world, I really enjoy solitude, but I noticed that my life has always been balanced, because I like being alone in solitude, but I've always been an entertainer, so I have the balance of always meeting people.
Right.
But for some people, it's a thing. In you talking about that solitude, it made me think of the story of Leonard Bernstein, classical conductor. He said, I would have been a composer, but I just love people too much. I have to be around people, and I can't take that time in solitude, where some people just kind of relish it and enjoy it. And you just have to find what's your fun and kind of adjust to it. But he was such a people person; he had to be around people all the time.
Yeah, no, And in
Yeah.
that journey, I mean, in that journey when you're making these decisions, I mean, you talked about Will Calhoun, and I would run into him in New York. I first met him way before because I used to go to New
Yes.
York monthly when I was in university in Montreal, monthly to study
Yeah.
with different people. So one of my teachers was Horace Arnold, and he was studying
Oh.
with him as well. And so we would cross paths, and then later on, we connected when he was in Living Color, and I said, "What?" So it was nice to see that I had no idea that that whole project was so unique. And I said, "Oh
Yes.
man, it's unbelievable." So he would come to town and invite me to the concert, and he's done so many great projects from that. I mean, he's one of those
Yes.
musical travelers, right? Like yourself. I
Uh,
mean,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
at some
Yeah.
point, I mean, because you also, I mean, you played ukulele. Now I see the connection with the Zen drum and the ukulele.
Uh,
Why that? Because you invented this
mm,
percussion instrument
drum.
with, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
before that, you were playing in bands with your brothers, or that
Yeah.
development. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, since we were kids, like young kids, man, we started playing in Hawaii. Victor was 2 years old when we were starting to do our first concerts in Hawaii, playing out in the yard. And when Vic was two, he was just playing along with us, Mickey Mouse guitar, and we were playing around him,
Okay.
but he's just in. When he's three, Reg actually starts showing him where the notes go and stuff.
Wow.
And by the time he's five and we're living in California, we're opening for War.
Wow.
And a couple later, we're opening for Curtis Mayfield's Superfly tour. So there was a lot of rapid progress where we were opening for Temptations, Mongo Santa Maria,
Wow.
um, all kinds of super artists at a very rapid. Now 2 years is a big time for child years. 2 years seems like a long time, but you think about 2 years, a lot happened. So along the way, yes, I'm playing with my brothers. We're growing up and we're just steeped in performance and getting better as musicians. It's like we're growing up with pop music, but as you keep getting better, you're going to start learning about jazz and learning about other uh, 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 super advanced musicians. You're going to learn about Miles Davis. You're going to hear about Coltrane and these drummers. And all of a sudden, I just remember growing up where all of a sudden these jazz drummers, which was all about finesse and touch, started becoming the most powerful drummers, more powerful than rock drummers. Like all of a sudden, Tony Williams, like
Tony
you watch
Williams,
Tony
right?
Williams, I could just sit with you and we could just have a Tony Williams day. And Tony Williams, this 16, 17-year-old dude playing with Miles, bopping, man. Fast, Four and More. I just saw the story about Four and More, how that came. You know the CD Four and More. It's just up tempo jazz. You need to listen to that. That's perfect, right? They said that record came when they were doing a NAACP function, and they found out they weren't going to get paid. So I think they just sort of let go and just went, and they thought it wasn't that good until they listened back to it. Two records I think came out of that: My Funny Valentine and Four and More. And
Right.
it's just like, whoa, you know? And it's like, so you're learning from this stuff that's coming at you, Tony Williams. And then Tony Williams is the first guy to go bombastic with
Right. No
jazz,
kidding.
right?
Yeah.
You can see it in his forearms. He's playing jazz and he's tripling like this. If you just bend your elbows like this, you start to get the Tony thing. Cindy Blackman knows it. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
Because you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Well, she has the posture of Tony's posture for sure.
Yeah.
But I have a really interesting, a funny story actually about Tony Williams. When I was studying
Yes.
that first year where I was studying with a classical timpanist at Ottawa University, he was the National Arts Center timpanist, and he knew I was like
Yes.
drums was my first instrument, but I really wanted to learn percussion. I really wanted to do the legit thing and learn music in general and go somewhere with
Yes.
that. So
Yes.
one day he walks in and he gives me this album, the
Uh-oh.
Black album. It was a trio, right? Organ. I think Jack Bruce was on the album. Tony Williams, Lifetime,
Oh,
the Lifetime album.
Lifetime.
So I had no idea, Roy. I had no
Yes.
idea. I'm just kidding. I just wanted this. He says, here, listen to this and tell me what you think. I'm listening to it, and I blew my mind. So when I came back my next week lesson, Ian Bernard was my teacher, said, so what'd you think? He says, wow. I said, unbelievable. All that cymbal overdubbing. In those days, that must have been really amazing. He said, no, that's like one take. That's Tony. I said, I went, my jaw hit
Right.
the ground. He says, it's impossible. I,
Beautiful story. Beautiful story. And
I never saw Tony live, and
yeah, and it's
unfortunately,
so
but
funny, I'm thinking about Tony Williams because for me, he's one of the most poetic drummers. There's so much technique in drums now. All these great young drummers with the gospel chops, and there's just so much fire that I think, like, after Tony, here comes Billy Cobham busting through the door.
right,
You know what I mean? And after him, all bets were off. See what I'm saying? It's like I explained, like when Billy Cobham came onto the scene. Before him, pedals had leather straps to pull the pedals down. That was the standard. But Billy was snapping through this stuff. He was breaking cymbal stands. So now cymbal stands are thick because of this guy that came through like a Luke Cage superhero on the drums. Coming after Tony Williams, he was like, oh, we can play like this. Bow, bow. And it's like, whoa, the drums haven't been the same. So we have all these acrobatic drummers. Like everybody's at that Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Like
right.
LeBron and
Yes,
Kobe,
yes.
Iverson. They all want to be like Mike. So coming after Tony and Billy, everybody's raised up to that level. So we got gospel chops happening. But what I like about Tony, he's so poetic. If you can get the poetry and the
Yeah,
space and the it's something about the heart when he's going and
right,
you see it with Billy. And when I say poetry, I think about the record Nefertiti,
right.
right? He was more and more, he's just killing it fast. And I'm going back to me and Billy Drummond. Him telling me about four and more, dude, you got to hear this. Like Tony's just boom, right? But then later on, he called me, he said, you got to come over here right now. Tony Williams is killing on a ballad more than four and more. Walking over his house, like, how do you kill on a ballad? You know what I mean? Like, it's funny because I've heard Yogi Horton, the great
Right.
Yogi Horton, playing with Luther Vandross, and he would kill on a ballad. But Tony Williams is on Nefertiti, and sure enough, I said, Billy's got to be exaggerating. You know what I mean? I'm walking over thinking in my head, how do you kill on a ballad, man? And you listen to Nefertiti, and it's rich with so many poetic jewels. It's like Shakespeare spitting over 200 phrases that we still use today in
Right.
one fell swoop. You know what I mean? And Miles and them said the first take didn't get recorded. So all they're doing is trying to catch what they did the first time. You know what I mean? They're just trying to catch what didn't get recorded. Somebody didn't hit the play button.
Oh,
So
ouch.
there's a take of Nefertiti that we have, and then there's another take, a second take. I've heard this, which was actually the third take. I've heard that. But they said there's a take that we didn't get. And they were just chasing that, trying to get back to that zone where Tony was just, he was leading, he was just
Yeah.
gone. So anyway, I'm saying this to say, when Carter spent that summer with us, Cindy Blackman had come with her parents, was down the street and heard the drums and walked over to Billy's house. Young, ponytail, freckle face. She heard the drums and she said, I love the drums, man. And everybody's trying to get me to play flute and clarinet and marching band. But I love the drums. So we told her, yeah, you can play drums. But when she came, we were listening to Tony Williams. And
Nice.
if she hadn't let go of that, you hear Tony Williams in the fiber of her
Oh, yeah. Oh,
every
for
being.
sure.
She has his cymbals.
Really?
And
Okay.
she has his style playing. She can play like his bop and she can play like his fusion. I heard her do it with Lenny Kravitz, where she was like the force
Sure.
behind that rock thing with that Tony Williams, like, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So it's been a pleasure watching your friends, get a hold of this music bug and run with it. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so when you ask me about like my development, growing up playing with my brothers, along the way we start getting introduced to these advanced musicians. Oh, who's this Tony Williams guy? Because we'd be jamming in the garage, and we had a friend named Jimmy Larson, great bass player, really great guitar player, but he would switch the bass, but he would get on the drums and he'd be sounding like Tony. We didn't really know who Tony Williams was. blah, 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 and he's doing the forearm. Blah, 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 blah,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. It's like, what are you doing? He said, man, you got to listen to Tony, man. That's Tony. And so we're learning about Tony, man. Then out of that, here comes Billy Cobb.
Yeah.
I still haven't got over Billy Cobb, man. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I just see him when I see Dennis Chambers.
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know what I mean? We all the flu that he put out. You know what I mean?
No, I remember.
He was stronger than COVID, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He changed everything coming out of that. So what I'm saying is, like, along
Yeah.
the way, you meet these great musicians, and here's these finesse drummers who are suddenly the most powerful drummers on the planet. Like, how is that happening? Right? And so, it's just reminding me on the journey, seeing Billy Cobham for the first time. And it wasn't Mahavishnu. I missed Mahavishnu. And
Okay.
I met Billy Cobham after the show in Williamsburg. And he said, man, I'm never going to play that intense again. It's so high. I've already dialed it back. And his dial back with Billy Cobham George Duke Band was ridiculous. Man, it was just ridiculous. It felt like
Sure.
wind. Just
Sure.
like, what is that? And after the show, Billy Cobham showed me, like, with technique. He says, people think I'm pounding into the drums, but he showed me his technique. He got the waitress in the back to fill up a cup of water, and the water had ice in it, a glass cup to the top. And he started doing doubles, rippling the water without spilling it. He was doing doubles on the water and singles on top of water on the glass. I felt like I was in the Shaolin Temple, man.
Wow.
You know? So, along the way, we're musicians, and we're infusing that in our music and our technique. You know what I mean? So just going to me, I've always loved mastery of the instrument, virtuosity, and just James Brown, the feeling of the drums. But technique. So I love Buddy Rich. Buddy Rich is the guy would be on the Tonight Show, be on the big shows, and he just has all of that technique, And I love that. And I just remember for a long time, I was on a quest to learn all of these stickings. They're not stiff like standard 26 rudiments. It's how these jazz cats are using it. And I ran into I took lessons with a guy named Win Winfrey to help me to speed up my track on learning how these jazz people are putting together these rudimental patterns to do these stickings that I see Buddy Rich doing, but I don't have any idea. It's kind of like with gospel drumming. They're going so fast. You got to get somebody to slow it down. What are you actually doing? You know what I'm saying? It was that kind of thing. And he gave me Win Winfrey gave me this book, Charles Wilcoxon.
Of course.
Swing Solo. And man, I would go through that book. I would just go, man, this is some slick stuff. This stuff sounds like Billy Joe Jones. I would keep saying that. Then I learned that Billy Joe Jones studied with Charles Wilcoxon. And that's all Billy Joe Jones talked about was Charles Wilcoxon.
Yeah.
What's his name? Virgil Donati studied with Billy Joe Jones. And he said all Billy Joe talked about was Charles Wilcoxon.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was on the path. And to this day, I always thank Win Winfrey for getting me into this, see how these doubles and singles flow together. Now, on my journey along the way, I've always liked Latin drumming. The reason why is because in Latin drumming, sometimes jazz gets so advanced, I feel like they get far away from the dirt and the soil. There's no dirt in the fingernails. It's so on the cymbals and so over everybody's head. Sometimes people don't care about what the audience is feeling, but not so in Latin drumming. No matter how complex it gets, Giovanni Hidalgo, he is not leaving the dance floor.
Yeah,
They're connected to the earth and how people are moving their bodies, and it gets complicated.
Oh, yeah.
When the drummer is doing that on the timbre, and the pocket is right there. Especially like you see somebody like Horacio.
Exactly.
And he's like an octopus all of his drumming, the cowbells holding it down. You know, I've heard Antonio Sanchez actually show it in slow motion, how you think about it. I love that. You know what I'm saying? Because in salsa music, you got the swing and you still got the funk. It's just so funky, man. Like, I'm not going to harp on this, but if you look at big bands today, the jazz big band is not moving the dance floor the way it used to be. You know, like when you see Johnny Carson, people used to dance to that.
That's
you
right.
know what I'm saying? That's how people used to dance. But people are not dancing like that no more. So it's kind of more
cerebral,
kind of museum and joyous, but it's not moving the body. Not so in Latin music. See what I'm saying? You go see a Latin big band and the dance floor is full.
Yeah.
And when the percussionist takes a solo, man, you don't know what's going on, but you feel it.
Of
And the
course.
dancers are dancing to the solo.
Yeah.
Just, dude, I'm like, I just marvel at that. You know, when you see that tradition of dance is not severed in Latin music. And so Latin music got that funk and got that dirt still not broken. And I love that, man. You know, they're like everybody can't just play in a Latin band. The bass player, you're not playing on the ones. You off the one.
That's right. Yeah. Of
But you gotta feel that one.
course.
See what I'm saying? There's a cultural
Yeah.
line that's so powerful. So I'm really inspired by that. And then on my journey, another unknown thing is the funk of Elvin Jones, those polyrhythm triplets, has something that I like in Afro music, Afro Cuban, and salsa got that Elvin thing that's still in the dirt. Your fingernails are dirty because you're planting in the garden. Yeah, so it's that. And then another big influence for me is Curtis Mayfield. When we were kids, we opened for Curtis Mayfield and we learned
Okay.
about playing soft. He played soft all night. He played soft and soft. And he would just pull the audience off their seat. You know, it's like do 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 do, and then he back up, and it was just so moving. But he had a percussion player, and they called him Master Henry Gibson, and he
Okay.
had a plastic rototoms inside of his bongos. So he'd go from the bongos to these rototoms, and that's what you hear like on the beginning with Superfly when he goes do 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 do. And he would take solos, man, and they were all melodic. All his solos were melodic and rhythmic. And that was a bug that got me when I was a kid. I was like, oh, so the drums, they can play the beats and the rhythms, but you can also hit the melody. And when a drummer hits the melody, it's not like a horn player. It's different.
Yeah.
It has a different to it, you know? And so I've been on that quest for a long time. That's what's behind my drum guitar experiments. Because first of all, I'm just trying to see, can I get to the rudiments in a meaningful way with my fingers? Which I found I can do the mama daddy and stuff with my fingers like if I like
Right. Yes.
right?
Like, yeah. And anybody who plays frame drums would
Yeah,
have facility. I mean, I play a lot
yeah,
of frame drums along
yes,
with everything else,
exactly.
and that
It's funny
helps.
you say that because Glenn Velez was the first one to show me how they go they
Yeah.
pop and
Yeah.
hit the thing. I was like, wow, man, culture will always show you something new. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like we'll show you
yes.
something that you didn't know was there. And so yeah, it's the letting the fingers go through the motions of the rhythms. And when you do, uh, like a paradiddle or a double stroke roll, which is usually two back and forth, mama daddy, mama daddy, mama daddy, can become mama daddy, mama daddy. So it's
Right.
four places, which is four different notes. It's taking you laterally, and that becomes the slope and shape and framework of the rhythm becomes a melodic framework that takes you through the notes in a different way. So
Yeah.
I'm on that journey. Um, where Miles Davis made a statement. I used to keep this statement in my wallet when Miles Davis said the melody will be found again through the rhythms of the drums and the bass.
Interesting. Interesting to
And I
say
was
that.
like, you know, I thought about that for a long time. And I think about that. It's like Miles was so right, man, because drums and bass, like people now when they're doing hip hop tunes and stuff, they said that we're not writing tunes, we're writing beats.
That's right. Yeah.
We're writing beats. You know, it's like, yeah, through the rhythm of the drums and bass. So through the drums, I have found a doorway into the melody, you know, and instrument that I'm working on now.
No, it's interesting that you say that. I've come to a big conclusion when people come to study with me or when I talk about drums or percussion. I say this
Yeah.
is I don't teach and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
in two worlds, rhythm and melody. It's all melody. Without
Yes.
it's all strictly melody. I mean, you play a cymbal, there are many notes in it. You make melodies with the instruments that you have, and everything has a pitch, some kind of pitch. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily define it as a D or an F sharp or whatever,
Yes.
but these are melodies that you can
Yeah.
sing, you can repeat, or you can make variations of. So we are playing melodies.
Now,
Only
what you're
melodies.
saying is so deep and so spiritual because when you take a rhythm, right, especially polyrhythms, if you play 3/2, and you speed it up, it becomes two pitches, right?
Right.
These slow rhythms speed up to become pitches, and I think it becomes a fifth. I think you play 4/3, it becomes two different intervals. So rhythm literally is tone slowed down,
Yep.
literally. And so here's rhythm, this word that looks like an Egyptian word, RHYTHM. See what I mean? In that word, you can see the word hymn. You know, you can see
Right.
the word hymn. You can see the implication to the word rhyme. You come backwards from the M, you can see the implication to the word myth. It's mythic. You know what I mean? This is a
Right.
spiritual thing. In the beginning of every religion is the rhythm. They might say it was the what did they say in the beginning was the word. You know what I mean? But in space, it's not like you're gonna hear words, but you may see the symbols that become words. So we
Right.
hit rhythm, and what happens if you bow a glass? Ooh, all of a sudden you see a design comes out on the glass. They call it
Right.
cymatics. Just from the frequency, those are the words right there. We don't know what they're saying, but those you're looking at the letters of the words right there.
Yeah.
And every religion is speaking to that. And rhythm is right on it. So when we're playing our beats and stuff, the rituals in church or whatever, though that ritualistic repetition is creating a matrix on a higher frequency too. We're on the floor, but there's a ceiling relationship that's so profound. So I just hear what you're saying, and it reminds me of an old saying where the ancient people used to say, "If I can't touch the ceiling, measure the floor."
Ah.
Right, right. So frequency and rhythm we can hear in 7 octaves, and after 7 octaves, it moves on and becomes light and other stuff. But what it does down here, where we can deal with it, is profound. See what I'm saying? So rhythm is a place where we're dealing with it. We're dealing with the fundamentals of pitch and tone, just like you said. And it's just so true. But observing ritualistic pattern and stuff is related to everything. Even all the way down to Fibonacci, these relationships to pi and all that. People investing money are dealing in rhythm. When to
Right.
go in, when to come out. It's rhythm. And they base it on these Fibonacci ratios and stuff. So music is like we're in that place. And so for me, in dealing with drums, we're at that primal mother place of music. Really, rhythm is a mother place of music itself.
Right.
You know, and on that level, it's like I'm always thinking about the rhythm's relationship to any band. You know, who's ever the rhythmist, who's ever that person is infused in the life force in that group. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The
Yep.
life force in that group is really kind of seam together. Think about Mahavishnu without Billy Cobham, you know, to come and explode that. Think about Miles Davis. He didn't get Tony Williams in there to just light that new fire that he was going for. You know, he had Philly Philly Joe Jones before that. You know what I mean? The drummer brings something that you don't think about. Elvin Jones with Coltrane. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Coltrane found his dirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
However far out he went, it was connected to the dirt. You know, and
Yeah.
Elvin was just like, he still makes me go, ooh, man.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything I play is connected to Elvin some kind of way.
Okay, so yeah, no,
My,
I could see that
yeah,
because Elvin, I mean, really was really outside the box, and I was fortunate enough to see Elvin a number of times. And
yeah,
when you say loud, you know, the room, he was bigger than the room, and
yes.
that's the first time I realized because I always, you know, you think jazz, this is light, jazz, it's light. You're playing rock and roll, you see Elvin Jones, you said, this is louder than rock and roll. This is like, they're like filling the room.
Right. And then you hear about how the drummer for Jim Morrison is watching Elvin Jones like, whoa, right? And he said, I tried to do the way Elvin was pushing Train, I tried to push Jim Morrison like that because I was inspired by Elvin
Right,
Jones. You
right.
see this relationship where a lot of times in our time, we can get stuck in genre, but music is not stuck in genre.
Yeah.
And true artists are not either. Rock and roll, it doesn't matter that he's playing with Jim Morrison, he's playing with John Coltrane. they know what good is. You know what I mean? They know what good is, so the labels don't matter. And it goes with classical music too. There's a love affair happening between the genres, which is a whole study in itself. Like where Notorious B.I.G. is studying with Jordan, saxophonist, not Clifford Jordan. No, Donald Harrison is a mentor for the Notorious B.I.G. And when you YouTube it, him talking about Donald Harrison talks about Notorious B.I.G. He said this kid was so talented, I was grooming him to be a jazz musician, right? But hip hop was his thing. Right. So he said I had him listening to the left hand of the jazz drummer. So when you groove, that's where all the syncopation is in the left hand. Right. And he had Biggie listening and studying the left hand. And he said, whatever I gave Biggie, he would come back with 10 more things. But when you listen to the Notorious B.I.G., that's why he's swinging so hard.
It's interesting. I mean, the other thing that you mentioned that's really interesting is this movement from one, like you say, genre, or instrument, from one instrument to another really doesn't matter. That it's what, well, like the point you made in the beginning, which I find really interesting, that the instrument finds you, and it chooses you. Basically, what you're saying, and it's true, right? But then across one instrument and another, that same information, it's like cross learning or information that you use on another instrument, but it's the same idea, the same concept. So the instrument is just the medium.
Yes, it's this thing. You're reminding me of what Bruce Lee, the martial artist, called Jeet Kune Do. It's the way of no way. You know what I mean? And he's pulling in influences from boxers. He's watching Muhammad Ali through a mirror to see him with a right hand lead. He's studying Muhammad Ali like that. That's why he's dancing. Come on, you know what I mean? And so you're getting influence on so many levels. But going back to something you said, there was something I was going to connect that you said earlier about your music journey. It'll come back to me. But this whole thing that is genreless. Oh, I was going back to how your timpani player, classical dude, gave you the fusion record. See what I mean? Here's a classical dude, and he said, check this out, right?
Yeah, oh yeah,
and the
absolutely.
reason why this is so profound, because right now, Tony Williams still doesn't get the credit for introducing fusion music to the world. Miles Davis gets the credit. But Miles was just trying to keep up with Tony. Tony was leaving Miles, and Miles like, what they doing? You know what I mean? And Tony was bringing over Alan Holdsworth from England. He brought over John McLaughlin. See what I'm saying? He brought these guys over because if you watch Tony, he said, I was trying to put in the Ringo's licks and putting on these rock licks. And then when Tony would do his quintet, if you watch him, Tony is playing fusion. He can barely fit in jazz anymore. Right. You know, and he's basically playing fusion drums, and they're dressed up in suits, still playing jazz. And he's erupting to another type of music. Yeah. So he has to get John McLaughlin, Alan Holdsworth, these people who are on another thing. And that becomes the stuff like you heard, the $1 Million Legs, the first fusion records. Miles is trying not to get left behind. Right. So he uses Tony's players. He brings McLaughlin over to record Bitches Brew. This is how I would do it. See what I'm saying? And Miles, because he has a bigger name, gets that credit for it. But Miles says that we were following Tony Williams, even when he was in the band. And so there it is again, that drummer's relationship as the linchpin into the magic of a group. A lot of times that drummer has. Look at Dave Matthews Band. The linchpin is Carter Beauford. There's the linchpin right there. Boom. Without Carter, you got a whole nother story.
Yeah, no, he's on a whole other level. And I mean, not only being left-handed, but his concepts, his little ideas, and it looks like he's doing nothing. And sometimes I would look at him, and it's like Gad, same thing. It looks like nothing.
Gad, which is good because Gad got that pocket, right? Out of all the fusion drummers, I love Vinny, I love Weckl and all of that, but Gad got that down in the earth where your fingernails are dirty, down in that pocket, and that's Carter Beauford. See, I knew Carter playing with Secrets, where Dave got all his musicians from, and Carter was always this pocket drummer. Whatever you're doing, the pocket is going to be solid. Yeah. Then when I saw him with the Dave Matthews Band, I saw Carter playing. He's still playing the pocket, but he's flowering all over the pocket. I was like, whoa, this band is good for Carter because it's kind of like he's soloing all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that hi-hat,
Oh,
those little bells, he's kind of soloing, flowering the whole time. But I think a lot of people miss that what makes Carter work, he's a pocket drummer.
yeah.
So if you hear this tune, a great example is I'm like Magic Johnson, man. I'm sending flowers out to everybody. But Carter, I laugh every time I hear him play this Rapunzel.
Right.
You hear the tune Rapunzel, it's like man, a salsa band would kill that tune.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? All the funk in that tune. Ain't nobody hitting the one for a long time. Boom, 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 boom. Bam! They finally hit the one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the audience doesn't care that it's not in 4/4. The audience is just da 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 boom, ba da 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 bop, 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 boom, ba da 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 bop, 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 bop. They haven't hit the one yet, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And so to me, boy, just now talking to you, I would love to hear a salsa
well,
band.
and I've been going to Cuba for the last 22 years, and we do these projects there. So I've gotten to know like almost everyone over there, and
Yeah.
working with guys like Changuito, who was like the Billy Cobham, the guy who, now he's not doing very well, but there was a time when you just couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Never mind what he was doing. I remember we had him at Cosa once. I brought him in for a whole week to stay with us, and Horacio was there, and Jim Chapin.
Yeah.
And then with my group Repercussion, we're doing this concert together. All of a sudden, Changuito's doing something, and he looks up at me. He looks at me in the eye and had this big grin. And I'm trying to figure out what he's doing. And I'm looking over at some of the other guys to see, are you understanding anything? He's lost me. And then I asked him afterwards. I said, "Where does that come from?" He just says, and he's not a trained musician, right? But these things just came.
But he's tapped into whatever this source is of music. He's so
Africa.
tapped in.
He's got
Changuito's like my other Elvin. You know what I mean? Like I heard about Changuito. They said this guy was the Charlie Parker on drum set. And he's not even playing drum set anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's playing a hybrid. But they just said, man, this guy was like Charlie Parker on the drum set. So I'm just imagining him. When I hear him, I hear that same thing that I get from Elvin. The timing is pulling. It's like when I see that Kunga Masters with Giovanni and Changuito.
Right.
Here's a videotape where most of the time people talk. They don't even talk. They just play for about an hour before they say anything. And the way they shift, it's like birds flocking. Woo, now we go in here. The birds going. It's like, dude, wow, man. I don't know if you got any of that recorded that you're talking about when you brought him here, when he was doing that stuff, but.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a funny thing. With Changuito, and I've known him for years, and I see him all the time. But when we first brought him, I said, we went through all of this trouble, and you're the Grand Master. We want you here, but I need one favor. So I took a drum lesson with him because I knew he was a drummer. The whole songo thing and what he had, his ideas, his concepts.
Yeah.
And I said, just 1 hour with you. And he said, so I recorded it. And of course, I couldn't play half of it until I wrote my book, Cuban Rhythms for Percussion and Drum Set. Yeah. So in there I said,
give me the title again.
Cuban Rhythms for Percussion and Drum Set, The Essentials.
Okay.
And so when I did that, when I got to the section I was talking about songo, and I remembered I had that recorded. So then I wrote it all out, and I said, this is what Changuito, one of the things Changuito gave me at the time, I couldn't do it. My brain wouldn't accept it. and I said, okay, that's 5 years work just to get my brain around that idea. And it's funny because when I finished the book and I asked him and a couple of other people to look through everything to make sure that I wasn't saying or inventing anything, I said, I'm working on the methodology and an understanding of this, and I have this whole thing about clave being so universal, much more universal than people think, from classical to everything. Anyway, so he says,
Yeah.
okay. Then he looked at it, he gave me his blessing and a few other people in Cuba. And then he says, when you're finished and you're ready, we should sit down and we're gonna work on some things that nobody knows.
Ooh.
And this stuff is from Africa, concepts that he has created, not created, that he has brought down through some channel.
Yeah.
And I hear
Yeah.
it because I studied African drumming. I studied all kinds of things. I hear it, and I'm saying, like, wow, this is a variation on, this thing in Mali or this thing in Senegal. And where did he pick that up? He didn't study there. It came from some other channel. Roy, I mean,
Yes.
that's a whole other thing that, when you say these instruments pick you and the whole place of music in the world, some people are just
Yeah.
antennas that bring it and bring it to us. So that we,
I mean, so right, man. And Changuito, if he's still alive, if
Oh,
there's
he's
any
still
way that I
alive.
could meet him while he's still alive, man,
Oh, yeah.
that would be a kick the bucket thing for me. Because he's like Elvin and Changuito are like two drummers that are wired to earth. You know what I mean? When they're pulling the time like that, they're naturally feeling the tuplets that are right next to triplets, but they're in the fives and the sevens. They're in those pockets and they feel so natural.